Have you ever wondered why you have brown eyes? Or why you have blonde hair? Why you have freckles? Or why you don't? These questions can actually be answered thanks to a man named Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk that lived in the early 1700s. He was very interested in the idea of heredity. Mendel decided to experiment on the many different pea plants that were grown near the monastery. He noticed that there were some pea plants with wrinkled peas and some with round peas, and some of those plants had yellow peas and others had green. Mendel noticed that when he crossed the round yellow peas with the wrinkled green peas, the offspring came out as all round and all yellow. This was different than the explanations of the time, so Mendel decided to continue his experiment. But this time he crossed that second generation seed with itself. The third generation showed that there were round yellow seeds, round green seeds, wrinkled yellow seeds, and wrinkled green seeds that showed up in different ratios. This led Mendel to the conclusion that there are dominant and recessive traits, and that we must receive one trait from our moms and one trait from our dads. This is now called the law of segregation. As Mendel did more and more experiments, he also noticed that the same traits did not always go together, that the traits were independent of one another, which is now known as the law of independent assortment. As you can see, because of Mendel and these two laws, we can figure out our genetics and why we have the eyes, hair, height, freckles, and even more about ourselves. Nowadays, we use what are called Punnett squares to figure out what the offspring might look like based on what the parents look like and their different traits. On the next slide here, we are going to watch a little video on how to use a Punnett square. So today we're going to learn about how to create and fill out a Punnett square. And it's really easy. It just takes a few steps. The first step is to figure out what parents you're crossing. So in this case, we'll think back to Mendel's experiment. We'll go with that second generation that he had. And those were big R, and we'll just look at one trait at the moment, big R, little r, and then he crossed them with another big R, little r, so another plant from that same generation. So here we can see that the way that these plants are going to look are going to be round, right? Because they both have that big R, but they both also have that wrinkled trait, that little r trait. And so the way that we can figure out how the offspring of these two plants are going to look is by using a Punnett square. So it's really simple. First, you draw a box just like this, and then you divide the box into 4 parts, just because we're only looking at one trait here. So you're going to put each of those traits, so we'll put this parent right here. So we'll put big R, little r, and then we'll put the other parent right down here. So big R, little r. And then all we do is fill in the boxes. So we'll fill in this one. Okay, R, we're going to put a big R here. And we're going to put a big R here. And then a little r here. And we'll put a little r here. And then this one's a big R, so we get to put another big R. And then big R down here. So you just fill it in really simply. And then you can see what these plants will look like. So as you can see right here, so we have 2 big R's, which means this is going to look round. And same for these as well. Anything with a big R is going to look round, even though these also, like the parents, carry that little r. It's only going to express that round trait, even though it has that wrinkled trait. But it also means that they can pass that wrinkled trait on, which might be important if we end up looking at what this plant's offspring might look like. And then we also have right here a wrinkled. This plant will have wrinkled seeds because it has 2 little r's. And you can use a Punnett square to figure out really any cross that you'd like. And they do get more complicated. You can have ones that have multiple traits on them, and the boxes can get a lot bigger. There can be a lot more boxes. But right now we're just going to stick with these simple boxes right here. It's a good way to start looking at how we can figure out what offspring might look like from 2 different parents. See? Easy. Now that you know these rules and how to use a Punnett square, you can do genetics too.